Alpha King corners Omega in the Stormbound Courtyard as the storm parts to reveal her strength. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the main characters. In the Stormbound Courtyard, beneath the swirling clouds and heavy winds, stood Nathan Thorne, the Alpha King. His piercing silver eyes locked onto the lone figure standing across from him. Sophia Reed, the Omega, had been cornered, the elements themselves seeming to conspire against her. The storm raged, as if reflecting the conflict between the two, the wind howling in fury and the rain battering everything in its path. Nathan took a step forward, his towering presence imposing and commanding, while Sophia stood her ground, her eyes filled with defiance. She had always been the one to be overlooked, the one who had been rejected time and again, but today, something was different. Nathan could see the fire in her eyes, something he hadn't noticed before. Sophia was no longer the weak Omega he had once dismissed. As the storm parted, the wind suddenly quieted, the clouds parting just enough to let a sliver of moonlight pierce through the darkness. In that moment, Nathan really saw her. The Omega who had always been pushed aside, who had always been considered weak, was standing before him, strong and unwavering. Her strength wasn't just in her stance or the fire in her gaze. It was something deeper, something ancient, and something that Nathan had never expected to witness. Sophia took a step forward, the air around her shifting, as if the very elements were responding to her presence. She wasn't just an Omega anymore. She was more. As the storm parted, the moonlight revealed the depth of her power. She stood tall, not out of arrogance, but out of a newfound understanding of who she was. And in that moment, Nathan Thorne, the Alpha King, realized that everything he had known about her had been wrong. She wasn't the Omega he had believed her to be. No, she was something far more powerful, and the storm that had once surrounded them both was a mere reflection of the storm now brewing inside him. This wasn't just about power or dominance. It was about something deeper. It was about fate. It was about the connection they both shared, one that neither could deny any longer. And as the moonlight bathed her in its silver glow, Nathan knew one thing for certain: Sophia Reed was not just his Omega. She was his mate, and the storm had come to reveal their strength, both as individuals and together. The storm had quieted, the winds no longer howling in fury, and the rain had softened to a gentle mist. The moonlight now fully bathed the courtyard in its silver glow, illuminating the two figures standing across from one another. Nathan Thorne, the Alpha King, stood in stunned silence, his sharp silver eyes fixed on Sophia Reed. She had always been the one who faded into the background, the one who was dismissed and overlooked, but now, in this moment of clarity, she stood before him like a force of nature, unyielding and powerful. Nathan could feel the change in the air, a subtle shift that seemed to reverberate through his very soul. It was as if the storm itself had been a test, and Sophia had emerged victorious, revealing a side of herself that no one, least of all him, had ever expected. Sophia, still standing tall despite the storm that had raged within her heart for so long, met Nathan's gaze with a quiet determination. She wasn't just the meek Omega she had been once. She had discovered something inside herself, something that had always been there, but had remained dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The realization of her own strength was something that surged through her veins, empowering her with a sense of purpose that she had never known before. As the Alpha King continued to study her, Sophia felt a sense of unease settle in her chest. She had always known there was more to her than anyone had ever believed, but standing here, facing Nathan, someone who had once rejected her, seen her as weak, she felt exposed in a way she had never imagined. And yet, she didn't back down. The weight of her discovery, the truth of who she was too powerful to ignore. Nathan stepped forward, his boots making a soft crunch against the wet ground, his presence as commanding as ever. But now, there was a change in his demeanor. The cold, distant Alpha King he had once been was replaced by something softer, more curious, as if he were seeing her for the first time. I always underestimated you, didn't I? Nathan's voice, usually firm and unyielding, carried a note of disbelief. His words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, neither spoke. The tension was thick, palpable, but Sophia didn't flinch. She had nothing to fear anymore. "It's not too late to see me for who I truly am," she said quietly, her voice steady. Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly, his gaze intense, as if he were searching for something within her. "I've spent so much time judging you, looking at you through the lens of weakness," he said, his voice softer now, almost regretful. "But that's not what you are, is it?" Sophia didn't respond immediately. She simply let the silence hang, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the space between them. She didn't need to explain herself to him. The truth was there, as clear as the moonlight that now bathed the courtyard. Nathan took another step closer, his eyes not leaving hers. "You've always been more than just an Omega," he said, his voice low and filled with something akin to awe. "And I've been blind to it." The realization hit him like a thunderclap, and for the first time, he saw her, truly saw her, for the strength she carried inside. In that moment, Sophia realized that this wasn't just about proving herself to Nathan. It was about proving to herself that she was more than the labels others had placed on her. She had the power to shape her own destiny, and the Alpha King, Nathan Thorne, was a part of that. The storm had parted, revealing not only her strength but the beginning of something far greater. Something neither of them had anticipated. Nathan reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he extended it toward her. The connection between them, once fragile and uncertain, was now undeniable. "Will you let me see the real you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophia hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, her hand meeting his. The storm had revealed her strength, and in this moment, it had also revealed the bond between them, a bond that neither could deny. And as they stood there, hand in hand, the courtyard around them seemed to breathe, the storm finally giving way to the calm that had always been waiting for them. The moonlight now fully illuminated the courtyard, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the two figures standing still in the calm after the storm. Nathan's hand remained outstretched, still holding onto Sophia's with a firm, yet gentle grip. The bond between them, once uncertain and distant, now felt undeniably real. Sophia's heart raced, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, a deep, quiet strength that had awakened inside her. She had never felt more alive than she did in this moment, standing in front of the man who had once rejected her, now seeing her for who she truly was. She could feel the pulse of the storm still lingering in the air, a reminder of the chaos that had led them here. But that chaos was fading, replaced by something new, something calmer, but equally powerful. Nathan's gaze softened as he looked at her, his silver eyes filled with a mix of awe and wonder. He had spent his entire life fighting battles, conquering kingdoms, but nothing had ever felt as important as this moment, standing here with Sophia, the Omega he had once dismissed. "You are more than I ever imagined," he said, his voice low, but clear. Sophia didn't know how to respond at first. She had spent so much of her life being underestimated, being cast aside, that hearing these words from Nathan felt almost surreal. But she knew now, deep in her soul, that this was real. She was real. "I've always been here, Nathan," she said, her voice steady, but tinged with the quiet power she had discovered within herself. "I've just been waiting for the storm to part so I could see it." Nathan's lips curled into a small smile, though it was tinged with regret. "I've been blind," he admitted. "I never saw you for who you truly are." "I see it now. I see everything now." His words struck Sophia with unexpected force. The Alpha King, the man who had once ruled over her life with cruelty and indifference, was now standing before her, acknowledging her strength. She had never imagined this moment, and yet, it felt like it was always meant to be. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel the weight of his words. She was not weak. She was not the Omega who needed to be saved. She was a force of nature, as strong and unyielding as the storm that had just passed. Nathan took a step closer to her, his hand still holding hers, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I've wronged you, Sophia," he said. "And for that, I am sorry. But I need you to know that I see you now. I see your strength, your power. You're not just my mate. You are my equal." Sophia's breath caught in her throat at his words. Equal. It was a word she had never thought would be used to describe her. And yet, as she stood there with Nathan, she felt it. She felt the weight of his words settle into her heart, and for the first time in her life, she believed them. She wasn't just an Omega. She wasn't just someone to be protected. She was someone who could stand beside him, as an equal, as a partner. The realization hit her like a wave, and for a moment, all she could do was stand there, overwhelmed by the gravity of it. Nathan seemed to sense her hesitation. He stepped closer, his hand lifting to gently brush a strand of hair away from her face. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now," he said softly. "But I do hope that, in time, you'll see that I want to build something real with you. Something that goes beyond the roles we've been forced to play. You and me, Sophia. We can change everything." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise. Sophia's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a surge of warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just about him seeing her strength. It was about the possibility of something more. Something she had never dared to imagine. She looked up into Nathan's eyes, seeing the sincerity in them, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe. They could be something more. Together, they could build something that was theirs alone. The storm had parted, revealing not just her strength, but a future she had never believed possible. With Nathan by her side, she could finally see the path ahead, a path that was no longer defined by fear or rejection, but by the promise of something new, something powerful, something destined. As the days passed, the kingdom seemed to breathe a little easier. The storm that had once raged outside now mirrored the change that had begun inside the castle. Nathan and Sophia, though still navigating the complexities of their new bond, found themselves growing closer with each passing moment. They spent hours together, talking, training, and even laughing in moments that felt like a dream to Sophia. She had never imagined this kind of life, where she wasn't just a figure of pity or weakness, but someone whose presence was valued. Nathan, for his part, seemed to be adjusting as well. The man who had once been rigid and unyielding now showed glimpses of something softer, more vulnerable. It wasn't just the power of his position that made him a king, it was his willingness to evolve, to see beyond the roles they had both been forced into. One afternoon, as they walked through the castle gardens, Nathan spoke quietly. "I never imagined what it would be like, having someone by my side who truly understands," he said, his voice steady, but filled with a quiet sincerity that caught Sophia off guard. She glanced at him, her heart swelling with emotions she had long buried. "I think we both have a lot to learn," she replied, her voice soft but confident. They stopped by a small fountain, the sound of the water trickling providing a peaceful backdrop to their conversation. "But that's the beauty of it, isn't it?" Nathan continued. "We get to learn together." Sophia smiled, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. She wasn't afraid of what lay ahead. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, as partners. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the castle, Nathan and Sophia found themselves standing on the balcony, watching the world around them. The kingdom, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now seemed to hold a promise of something better. Something more. Nathan turned to Sophia, his gaze intense yet filled with warmth. "You've changed everything," he said. Softly. "Not just for me, but for everyone around us." Sophia felt a surge of emotion, a deep sense of pride and relief. She had spent so much of her life feeling invisible, powerless. But now, she stood beside a man who saw her for who she truly was, someone with strength, intelligence, and the ability to shape her own future. "It's not just me," she said, her voice steady and sure. "It's us. Together." Nathan's eyes softened, and for a moment, they stood in silence, the bond between them growing stronger with each passing second. It was as if the world itself had paused, allowing them this fleeting moment of peace and understanding. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of change. A change that they would embrace together. As the night settled in, Nathan placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. "No matter what happens, you're never alone again," he said, his words a vow. Sophia looked up at him, her heart full. "And neither are you," she replied. They stood there for a while longer, watching the stars begin to fill the night sky, knowing that their journey had only just begun. Together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that the storm had passed and a new chapter had begun, one that was theirs to write. As the days passed, the kingdom continued to shift, and so did Nathan and Sophia's relationship. What had started as an alliance between an Alpha King and an Omega now bloomed into something far more intricate, something that neither of them had expected. Their bond grew deeper, their connection stronger. Yet, as with all great changes, the new peace they had found was not without its challenges. One evening, as the last rays of the sun disappeared behind the distant mountains, casting a cool twilight over the castle, Nathan stood at the edge of the balcony, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The air was crisp, and the world around him seemed quiet, but inside, his mind was restless. Sophia, sensing his unease, approached him slowly, her soft footsteps barely making a sound on the stone floor. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, the warmth of her touch grounding him. "What's troubling you?" she asked, her voice calm, yet filled with concern. Nathan turned to her, his silver eyes reflecting the fading light. "I've been thinking about the future," he said, his voice heavy. "We've made so much progress, but there are still so many who oppose what we stand for. There are those who would rather see us fail." Sophia's heart sank, and she stepped closer to him, her presence offering him the comfort he needed. "We knew it wouldn't be easy," she said softly. "But we have each other, Nathan. And together, we can face whatever comes." Nathan looked at her, his expression softening. "I know," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "But I also know that this, what we have, can't be taken for granted. We've worked so hard to get here, and I won't let anything destroy it." Sophia smiled, the weight of his words settling deep within her. She had always known the path to true power and equality would not be without its obstacles, but she also knew that with Nathan by her side, they could overcome anything. "We won't let anything tear us apart," she said, her voice steady, a promise between them. Nathan nodded, his hand reaching out to gently take hers. Together, they stood in silence, watching the stars slowly appear in the night sky, feeling the weight of their shared resolve. Their future was uncertain, yes, but they would face it together. As the night deepened, the castle around them seemed to embrace the tranquility that had begun to settle over their lives. Despite the challenges ahead, Nathan and Sophia knew that they were no longer just two individuals bound by circumstance. They were partners, equals, and that bond could not be broken by anything. "We've come a long way," Nathan whispered, breaking the silence. "And we'll keep going, no matter what." Sophia's grip on his hand tightened, her heart full of quiet strength. "Yes," she replied, her eyes never leaving his. "No matter what." The night stretched on, and as the world around them seemed to pause, Nathan and Sophia stood together, side by side, ready to face whatever the future held for them. They were not just an Alpha and an Omega anymore. They were a united force, and nothing, no storm, no challenge, could stand in their way. As the days turned into weeks, the castle grew quieter, the peace settling into the walls like a long-awaited breath. Nathan and Sophia had carved out a space for themselves, one where they could build the future they both longed for. But despite the tranquility that surrounded them, the shadows of the past still loomed, lurking just beyond the horizon. One evening, as the first light of dawn began to touch the sky, Nathan stood at the balcony, his eyes searching the distance. The weight of leadership, the responsibility he had carried for so long, never truly left him. Sophia, ever perceptive, joined him silently, her presence bringing a warmth that contrasted the cool morning air. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice soft, though there was an undercurrent of concern. Nathan turned to her, a faint smile playing on his lips, though his eyes were clouded with something deeper. "I've been thinking about the future," he confessed, his voice tinged with the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. "We've come so far, but there are still those who seek to undo what we've built. There are forces at play, Sophia, that we can't even begin to understand." Sophia's gaze softened, and she stepped closer to him, her hand gently brushing against his. "You've always carried the burden of leadership alone," she said. "But you don't have to anymore. We face this together, Nathan. Whatever comes, we'll face it as one." Her words, simple yet filled with the quiet strength she had shown since the moment they had come together, settled over him like a comforting blanket. For the first time in a long while, Nathan allowed himself to feel the weight of his position lighten. The storms that had once raged in his heart were beginning to calm, and he knew, deep down, that it was because of Sophia. "You're right," he said, his voice steady, his grip on her hand tightening. "We've faced so much already, and we've emerged stronger. Together, we can face whatever challenges lie ahead." They stood in silence for a while, the only sound the gentle rustling of the trees in the morning breeze. The world around them was awakening, and for the first time, Nathan realized that he was no longer alone in the fight. Sophia was by his side, not just as his mate, but as his equal, his partner in every sense of the word. "There's something else I've been meaning to say," Nathan added after a long pause. "I've spent my whole life fighting battles, external battles, battles for power, for dominance. But the real battle, the one that matters, is the one we face together. And I've never been more ready to face it than I am now, with you." Sophia's heart swelled at his words, and she smiled, her eyes locking with his. "And I'm ready, Nathan," she said, her voice firm, her resolve as strong as ever. "Together, we're unstoppable." As the morning sun rose higher in the sky, casting a golden light over the world below, Nathan and Sophia stood side by side, ready to face whatever the future held. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would walk it together. The kingdom may have been built on power and strength, but the real power lay in the bond they shared, a bond that could not be broken by anything or anyone. And with that realization, Nathan knew that whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together, united in purpose and in love. As the days turned into weeks, the kingdom began to feel a sense of balance, a peace that had once seemed unattainable. Nathan and Sophia, now firmly united, had begun to navigate the delicate dance of leadership together. Their bond, forged in the fires of their trials, had become the heart of their rule. They knew that the challenges they had faced were only the beginning, but they also understood that together, they could weather any storm. One afternoon, as they stood in the royal gardens, the scent of blooming flowers and fresh earth filling the air, Sophia turned to Nathan, her expression thoughtful. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said, her voice soft, yet filled with a quiet strength. Nathan smiled, his silver eyes reflecting the warmth of the sun. "Yes, we have," he agreed. "But we have only just begun. There is still so much to do, so much to rebuild." Sophia nodded, her gaze shifting to the horizon. "And we'll do it together," she said firmly, her words carrying the weight of their shared commitment. Nathan's heart swelled with pride at her words. It was more than just a partnership, it was a deep, unwavering connection that had grown stronger with each passing day. As the ruler of the kingdom, Nathan had always felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, but with Sophia by his side, he felt a strength he had never known. She was not just his mate, she was his equal, his partner in every sense of the word. They had both come from different places, different worlds, yet together, they had forged a path that was uniquely theirs. "You have changed everything, Sophia," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have shown me what it means to truly lead, to care for those we serve, and to build something that lasts." Sophia's smile was soft, but there was a fierce determination in her eyes. "We've both changed," she said. "You taught me what it means to stand strong, to fight for what's right. And now, together, we can create a future that's built on more than just power." Nathan looked at her, his heart full. He had once been driven by the need for control, for dominance, but Sophia had opened his eyes to the truth. True strength came from unity, from understanding, from love. And with that understanding, they would build a kingdom that would stand the test of time. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the land, Nathan and Sophia stood side by side, looking out over the kingdom they had vowed to protect. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles, but they no longer faced it alone. They had each other, and that was all they needed. "Together," Nathan said quietly, his voice full of promise. "Together," Sophia echoed, her hand slipping into his. They stood there for a while, watching the stars begin to fill the sky, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it side by side, as partners, as equals, as a united force. The kingdom had changed, and so had they. But one thing remained certain: their love, their bond, would be the foundation on which they built everything. And together, they would create a legacy that would last for generations to come. The days turned into weeks, and the kingdom continued to grow, but so did the challenges that came with it. Nathan and Sophia had created a new path, one that was built on trust, love, and unity, but not everyone in the kingdom was happy about the changes. There were those who still clung to the old ways, those who felt threatened by the growing power of their bond. It was an early morning when the first sign of trouble appeared. Nathan stood at the edge of the war room, his eyes scanning the maps of the kingdom, his fingers tracing the old battle lines that still lingered on the parchment. It had been peaceful for a while, but he knew it wouldn't last. There was always someone ready to challenge the status quo. Sophia entered the room silently, her presence grounding him as it always did. She could sense the tension in the air, the way Nathan carried the weight of the kingdom on his shoulders. "What is it?" she asked, her voice gentle, but firm. Nathan turned to her, his expression a mixture of determination and concern. "There are whispers," he said, his voice low. "Not everyone is on our side. Some are still loyal to the old ways. They believe that I've become weak, that this bond with you is a betrayal of everything I've stood for." Sophia took a step forward, her eyes meeting his with quiet understanding. She had always known that their bond would not be accepted by all, but hearing it out loud, seeing the impact it had on Nathan, made the challenge feel more real. "We knew this would happen," she said, her voice steady. "But we've already proven what we can accomplish together. We have to keep going, no matter what they say." Nathan nodded, the weight of the words sinking in. He had fought for this, fought for Sophia, fought for their future, but it seemed that some were not ready to accept the changes they had brought. "You're right," he said quietly. "But I need to protect you, Sophia. There are threats out there that we can't ignore. I've seen the shadows of rebellion before. I won't let them harm you." Sophia reached out, placing her hand gently on his. "We protect each other," she reminded him. "We always have, and we always will." Nathan met her gaze, the intensity of the moment making the air between them crackle with emotion. He had always been a warrior, a king, but with Sophia by his side, he was more than that. He was a man who believed in the future they could create together. "We'll face it together," he promised. As the days passed, the whispers of rebellion grew louder, but so did their resolve. Nathan and Sophia worked together, reaching out to allies, ensuring that the kingdom was not divided by the forces of fear and doubt. They knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but they also knew that their strength lay not in their individual power, but in the bond they had forged. One night, as they stood in the courtyard, watching the stars twinkle above them, Nathan pulled Sophia close, his arms wrapping around her in a protective embrace. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," he said quietly. "This, us, is worth fighting for." Sophia leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her chest. "And I'll fight for it, Nathan," she said softly. "I'll always fight for us." Together, they stood in the quiet of the night, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that as long as they had each other, nothing could break the bond they had built. The storm that had once raged inside their hearts was over, and in its place was a calm certainty that their love and unity would carry them through whatever came next. The quiet days in the castle had been a much-needed respite, but the shadows of doubt and rebellion still lingered on the horizon. Nathan and Sophia had faced many trials together, and though they had triumphed over every challenge, the kingdom was not yet fully at peace. Whispers of unrest continued to grow, and there were still those who doubted the strength of their bond. Yet, in their hearts, they knew they could not give up the future they had begun to build. One evening, as the moonlight bathed the castle in a soft glow, Nathan stood by the window, his eyes scanning the distance. The weight of leadership still rested heavily on his shoulders. He could feel the tension in the air, the uncertainty of what lay ahead. But beside him stood Sophia, the calm in the storm. She had become his anchor, his constant reminder of why they fought. "We've come so far," Nathan said quietly, his voice filled with both pride and concern. "But the future is still uncertain." Sophia stepped up beside him, her hand finding his. "The future is always uncertain," she replied, her voice steady. "But we have each other, and that's all we need." Nathan turned to face her, his silver eyes meeting hers with a quiet intensity. "You've always known how to calm me, haven't you?" he said with a small smile. "I've learned from the best," Sophia said softly, her own smile matching his. They stood together in silence for a moment, the weight of the world on their shoulders, but the strength of their bond giving them the courage to face whatever came next. The days that followed were filled with preparations. They reached out to allies, reinforced their alliances, and worked tirelessly to ensure the stability of their kingdom. Despite the growing tensions, they continued to stand strong, knowing that the foundation they had built together was unshakable. But as the days passed, a new challenge emerged, one that neither Nathan nor Sophia had anticipated. A messenger arrived in the early hours of the morning, breathless and carrying urgent news. A rival kingdom, led by a power-hungry monarch, had declared their intent to challenge Nathan's reign. It was a challenge not just for power, but for the very future of the kingdom Nathan and Sophia had fought so hard to create. As Nathan read the letter, his jaw tightened with resolve. "We've prepared for this," he said, his voice firm. "But we can't face this alone." Sophia nodded, her expression unwavering. "We have allies, Nathan. And we have each other. We will stand together, no matter what." With the rising sun casting its golden light over the kingdom, Nathan and Sophia knew that the time had come to face their greatest challenge yet. The road ahead would be difficult, but they had something stronger than any army: each other. As they rode out to meet the threat head-on, the kingdom held its breath. It was not just a battle for power, but a battle for the future they had fought so hard to build. Together, Nathan and Sophia would face whatever came next, united in strength, in love, and in the unshakable bond that had brought them here. They were ready. The future was theirs to shape, and with each other by their side, nothing could stand in their way.